Well, great. Our mission at the center is to preserve and present significant images of railroading. And this is most of our board and staff at our annual Conversations Conference this April. We've also been hosting these online programs every month since April of 2020. You can watch nearly all of them on our YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/railphotoart. We make annual awards for creative photography, and those will be the topic of our next online presentation just 1 week from tonight, when we'll be interviewing the winners of the 2023 John E. Gruber Creative Photography Awards. If you'd like to join us for that, you can register on our website, railphoto-art.org. Let's see, our other activities at the center include preparing and circulating traveling exhibitions that go to museums and galleries all over the country. You can learn more about them, including which ones are on the road right now, by going to railphoto-art.org/exhibits. We also publish books in a quarterly magazine called Railroad Heritage. We are finishing up the fall issue this week, and if you're a member, you can look for that in your mailbox in early September. If you're not a member yet and you'd like to be, you can sign up on our website, railphoto-art.org/support. Our next book debuts on October 1st. It's called Rio Grande Steam Finale, and it presents some absolutely breathtaking photography of the Denver and Rio Grande Western's narrow gauge lines in their final decades, through the lenses of some of the finest railroad photographers of the 20th century. We're pretty excited about it, and I'll be giving you a behind-the-scenes sneak peek if you join us for our October Zoom program. Follow us on social media. We're at RailPhotoArt on most of the major platforms for updates about that program and everything else we're doing. And in the meantime, you can go ahead and pre-order this book on our website, railphoto-art.org/books. We'll begin shipping those on October 1st. Our source of material for so much of what we do comes from our collections. Our Railroad Heritage Visual Archive has grown to house more than 500,000 images, and we've made commitments that will double that number in the coming years. As our holdings have grown, we needed software to help us manage and present them, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Before introducing Adrienne and Erin, though, I do want to say thank you. Our entire community of members and supporters empowers all of the work we do, and it's because of you that we've been able to build up and professionalize our archive. Leading the way are two members of our board of directors, Bon French and Rich Tower, whose gifts of time, talent, and treasure have been transformational for the center. Many of you have made special gifts to our collections work. We thank each of you. I also want to recognize Tom Brown, who helped fund the software that is tonight's topic. And finally, I want to recognize the Elizabeth Morse Genius Charitable Trust, a private foundation whose values-based grant-making included a 5-year investment in our collections work. Everyone who supports what we do has our sincere thanks. Now, here to tell you more about our new collections management system, that's CMS for short, an acronym you'll hear a lot tonight, is Adrienne Evans and Erin Rose. They both hold master's degrees in library and information studies from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Erin is our reference and digital projects archivist. If you've ever made an image request, you've probably worked with her, and I simply cannot overstate how instrumental she has been to the setup and launch of our new CMS. Before joining us, she worked for several library and digitization projects at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and she originally hails from Green Bay, Wisconsin, where several of her family members worked for the Milwaukee Road. Adrienne joined us in 2017 and has led the tremendous recent growth of our collections. She is originally from South Dakota, and she has worked for the Image Permanence Institute in Rochester, New York, and for History Colorado in Denver. She brings to us a broad knowledge of archival practices and a deep love of historic photography and artwork. And as her responsibilities with us have grown, at the beginning of the year, we gave her the new title of Director of Archives and Collections. Now, just one quick note about tonight's program. Adrienne and Erin will be taking questions at the end. Please ask them using Zoom's Q&A function. That's the Q&A button in the bottom middle of your Zoom bar. We might not see questions in the chat. So again, please use the Q&A button and feel free to drop your questions there at any point this evening. All right, let me end my screen share and then turn this over to Adrienne and Erin. Take it away.
Thank you, Scott. So, to get us started, here's a rather heroic image of our co-founder, John Gruber, taking us on an adventure with the new CMS. Yeah, as Scott said, I'm Adrienne Evans, the Director of Archives and Collections. Today, I will be showing you around the center's new collection management system, CMS for short, called Odyssey. We'll do a basic site tour, and then I'm going to demonstrate a few ways to browse and search the site. Erin Rose, our reference and digital projects archivist, will then take over and go through a deep dive on an item level record, as well as demonstrate the utility of our controlled vocabularies and search filters. But first, just a little background, because there's actually a lot of background here. So Odyssey has been developed by a small company called History IT and is a cloud-based archival and collections management software. And for those of you who have kind of been following the ongoing story of our acquisition of the CMS, its selection has been kind of a long road. We started basically in 2019 when we were awarded a grant from the Elizabeth Morse Genius Charitable Trust to improve our collections program. And over the following couple of years, we were joined by a consultant who helped us preview and vet numerous products. This also became kind of a drawn out process because, of course, the year we really started searching was 2020, and we all know what happened then. As we were looking at the field of products, History IT's Odyssey really stood out to us because it was really the only one that could offer us what we wanted. An off-the-shelf product that included an administrative backend for staff to manage collections, as well as a public-facing online collections portal. In addition, History IT was one of the few that offered enough storage space to really facilitate us posting like the numerous digital surrogates that we had created over the pandemic, which had yet to be seen by the public. And then finally, another important feature of the product was that it had the capability to allow us to batch upload large amounts of images with large amounts of captions and metadata. Finally, most importantly, the product was also on budget, which was another concern. So once we selected History IT's Odyssey, our staff went to work designing a new descriptive standard for the CMS. This was a long process of well. And then staff, with the help of History IT, migrated 8,500 images and captions from Flickr. And Flickr had been functioning as our online collections portal pretty much since I started at the center in 2017. So finally, with all of that accomplished, we went ahead and launched the public site in June and have started populating it with new selections that have never been seen before. These include works from the John C. Illman, John Gruber, and Jim Shaughnessy collections. So now that I've talked this product up a lot, you guys are probably wondering how you can access it. So from the center's website, we're seeing a screenshot of that right here. You can navigate to the collections tab up on the main navigation bar, select overview from the drop-down menu, and then once that page opens up, you will see a preview of Odyssey's homepage. You can click anywhere in there and it'll take you right to the homepage of the site. And then also we have the link circulating in the slideshow on our main homepage as well. I know there will be a website redesign in the next year or so, so this is likely to change, and we'll definitely keep you guys informed of where the link moves. And then it's also just as easy to learn the URL. So it's at railphoto.historyit.com. The extra backslashes here are not necessary when you type it into the search bar, but they will get us there now. So let's go ahead and take a look at the site. And I am going to need to do a little shuffling around here. Bear with me. All right, here we are. Okay, so here we are seeing the home page of the site. You'll notice right in big and right in the middle here is the basic search bar, which we'll get to in a second. But first, I want to draw your attention to the main navigation bar up here. There are lots of different features and ways to browse the site that are included. So let's just go ahead and look through them really briefly right now. So first, we'll hit the Explore tab. So the Explore tab basically features staff curated catalog records that have been organized into various albums. Right now, we've got new editions, which means new additions to the CMS. We've got an album dedicated to railroading in Madison, Wisconsin. Another one dedicated to animals and children and trains, because we're all big softies here. And then finally, Whatever the Weather, which is basically featuring railroading in extreme weather conditions. So if we click on one of these, it will basically take us to a bunch of catalog records that staff have put together kind of just for perusing. You can click each one and see a more detailed view of the record. We won't do that right now because Erin will be going through that later. Next up, we're going to go ahead and go to the Browse Images tab. So Browse Images basically brings up every image we have in the collections in kind of this random order that can be vertically scrolled. This is probably not the most focused way to explore the collections, but I think it might be good for casual cell phone viewing and maybe a nice just introduction to what types of things the center has for folks who aren't really familiar with us. So the next tab is the Featured Gallery. And right now, we're showing off here some selections from our Worker Wednesday social media series. And this is not to be confused with the albums in the Explore tab. This functions much more like an actual digital museum exhibit. So we just have captions and we just have images. These are not catalog records. And we're still kind of exploring, how we're actually going to use this feature. I think maybe the albums under the Explore tab are a little more useful, but we'd be really curious to hear folks' feedback about this, because it's something we're still a little bit iffy about. So the next tab may be a favorite of some of you. It is the Feedback tab. And basically, the Feedback tab links to a Google form that will enable users of the site to send us additions and corrections and suggested edits to catalog records directly. Basically, all you need to do in here is enter your email, the image identifier, your potential edit or addition, and then if you have it, supporting documentation to kind of prove your case. We try really hard to get everything correct when we're posting, but not every image has metadata and not every image has correct metadata. So we're really thankful to have an active community of knowledgeable people to help us out. And this is your opportunity to do that directly. So returning back to the site, our final tab is just a general about tab. This will link you back to our main collections page, and I think this is really useful for folks who are interested in our image usage and research policies, which are right here and really easy for you to grab. All right, so now we'll come back to the home page. And a couple other things to draw your attention to before we do any searches. So there are additional access points for the Explore tab, as well as the Browse Images tab. So you can use these buttons, or you can use the navigation bar at the top to navigate to those areas of the site. We also have the featured gallery below here as well for people who would prefer to scroll. And then finally, there is a contact us link down here, which will get you in direct contact with us. I would say this is probably best for either image requests or general site feedback. I would keep the feedback tab specifically for catalog corrections. But yeah, those are the main elements of the site. And now I think we'll start out with a basic search. So this basic search bar will search every metadata record on the site by any keyword. So it could be photographer's name, it could be subject, it could be railroad, it could be location, anything you can think of you can type in here. And we're just going to go ahead and start out with one of our photographers, John Illman. So you press the little magnifying glass to get some results. And they'll take a bit to load. So we have quite a few results. This pulled up 5,163 entries, and that's far more than we actually have of John Illman's images on the site. So here's what happened here. Basically, the site searched John as well as Illman as separate terms, so it returned everything that had the word John included in the metadata, and it also returned everything that had the word Illman. So as a result, we are getting images from John Gruber and from John Bjorklund, as well as John Illman. So the collection is kind of full of a lot of Johns. So this is a bit of a problem for us. So here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to introduce you to something called phrase searching. And phrase searching helps ensure that your results are accurate. You type quotation marks around your phrase, and basically the quotation marks tell the system to treat the word or phrase as a whole rather than as individual words or parts of longer words. So now, all right, now we get 53 entries, and those are all the Illman images on the site. You can see the image IDs right here, which feature Illman's last name as well as chain of digits. So we're good to go. So the basic search is really good when you're using phrase searching, and it's great for just kind of casual browsing or kind of as the starting point for a more complicated query. A lot of people are probably going to be more interested in advanced search, which can be accessed right here below the basic search box. So let's take a look at the advanced search. So advanced search allows us to search multiple criteria at a time, qualify those criteria in different ways, and also combine them in different ways. And first, I am just going to go through criteria and kind of give you a brief description of what every single one means. So first, we have identifier, and this criterion will search the digital collections based on the image's staff-assigned ID, which is typically the same as the image's file name. And I just pointed those out a couple minutes ago, I believe. So the identification is usually a combination of letters and numbers, and often includes the creator's name. It usually appears first in every catalog record. Next up is date range. So this criterion refers to the date or date range you would like to search. Typically, you would want to base the search on the period you're interested in researching or the assumed creation date of the image you would like to retrieve with the system. The next criterion is person. This is going to search by an individual's name and typically retrieves images by a particular creator. You would use this field to search the collections by photographers such as John Gruber, Richard Steinheimer, or Jim Shaughnessy, etc. And then next up we have description. This is just going to search the couple sentence long image caption that accompanies every catalog record. And then here we have keyword or subject. This criterion searches the digital collections by the various subject tags that our catalogers have applied to each image record. So common subject tags we've been using pretty frequently include pretty basic stuff like steam locomotive, diesel locomotive, railroad station, railroad employee, etc. And then finally, we come to, last but not least, the actual railroad. This criterion is going to search the digital collections by railroad name. As a general rule, our catalogers tag images in the digital collections with the name of the operating railroad depicted in the image. And please note that we use a controlled vocabulary of railroad names, which has been compiled by our staff with supervision from Scott, of course. And this helps us tag everything consistently. We have generally tended to use the full legal names of the railroads for the controlled vocabulary, unless those are superseded in usage by popular names. For example, we usually use like Milwaukee Road to tag stuff with rather than Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad. However, thanks to some of our back-end engineering, you should be able to type in either variant and still get the same results. So now I'd like to draw your attention to a few additional features here. So multiple search criteria can be combined using what we call Boolean search operators, and those are down here at the bottom of the screen. This first one here basically says return results that match all the criteria. And that's basically like combining these multiple criteria with the word and. The Boolean search operator and requires both or all terms to be included in the metadata of the returned images. If one term is contained in the metadata and the other is not, then the item is not included in the resulting list. And selecting this option is usually going to give you kind of narrower search parameters with a smaller amount of returned images. You can also choose or, and the Boolean search operator or requires that either term or both can be included in the metadata of the returned images. Selecting this option often broadens your search and returns more images. And as we're on the subject of discussing multi-criteria searches, we did discover a little quirk recently that I do want to bring up. It's a bit of a limitation right now. We are working on fixing it. But right now, you cannot search keywords and railroads in combination together, basically because they're both engineered in the back end as the same type of metadata, subject metadata, and we can't search two subjects at once yet. But History IT is working on this, and they're a small company that's really receptive to feedback. So I imagine this will be fixed pretty soon. Also, I want to point out, finally, these checkboxes that we see just on each side of every search box. Exact matches, which is located below the search box, will limit your search to the exact word or phrase that you enter in the search box. And this is not to be confused with require all terms, which, much like phrase searching, tells the system to treat a multi-word phrase as one search term. So that's pretty much what we have going on here. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of searches, and we're going to continue on with our friend John Illman. And then I would like to actually retrieve Illman's images of railroad workers. So I'm going to type in railroad employees because that is the controlled vocabulary term we're using for workers right now. And we are going to use and to combine both terms because, again, we are looking for John Illman images of railroad employees. So let's just do a little search and see what we get. All right, so we've returned a large amount of images again. I imagine many of you know why, but we've got 4,963 because the system, which is not smart and needs to be told what to do, has again pulled up John Gruber and John Bjorklund as well as John Illman images. So we're going to change our search to correct this issue. And we're going to do that by clicking require all terms next to the person box and require all terms next to the railroad employee box. Again, this should work very similar to phrase searching, where it knows now to treat each phrase as a single term. All right, so now we've got 12 entries. We can see here railroad workers, and that many of them and all of them are by John Illman. So that would be one way to use advanced search and the Boolean operators. Now, if we're interested in maybe seeing John Illman's railroad employee images, and just railroad employee images, we can do that too. And that's where we would use OR. So returning results that match any of the criteria above, and this should give us a much broader range of results. All right, so yeah, now we have 1,896 returns. We can see that we've pulled stuff from across collections. So these should be worker images from across collections, as well as probably all of Illman's images are included considering the search criteria. So that is an example of just kind of how OR works. I personally find AND much more useful, but you never know what folks are going to need. So let's go back to our search one more time, because I want to demonstrate the differences between require all terms and exact match. So I am actually interested in looking at John Illman's ATSF images. So I'm going to type in a railroad name into my railroad search box. And we're going to go Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway. And I feel pretty comfortable about, this being the correct legal name. I'm an archivist after all. I surely know this stuff. So I'm going to hit exact matches only to search this term exactly. And, oh, that was not quite correct. Let me go back one more time. Sup? Matches, and we've got and. I think this should be correct. All right, so this is what we should have seen. I must have hit the wrong button before. So when you hit exact match, you get 0 entries. And this is actually because of how the center is expressing its railroad names. We'll go back to the search and I'll tell you what happened here. So in our railroad controlled vocabularies, we're actually using ampersands to express ands rather than the actual word and. And when you search exact matches, it is going to take literally exactly what you're typing in, conjunctions and all. So instead, we'll hit require all terms. Require all terms is not going to count and. We've still got John Illman checked off with require all terms, and this should actually give us the correct and most accurate results, assuming I did everything right. Here we go. Yep, 3 entries, and these are all Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway images by John Illman. And I think now is a good point to stop, and we can look at one of these records a little more in depth with Erin.
That's me. Give me just a second to share my screen. Sure. Which screen are you? You are seeing the correct screen, right? The advanced search screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry. It looks really wonky on mine. All right. So apologies. This is almost exactly what we just saw, but on a PC instead of a Mac, because I'm a PC person. So we're going to take a quick look at one of these records that Adrienne had just pulled up. For for the sake of convenience, we're going to look at this first one. You can see a record just by clicking on the image. And I'm going to go over what the elements of the record are. So you can see we've got our file name or identifier up here. If you want to see the data, there are a couple ways to get down the bottom of the screen to see it. You can click on this more detail button and it'll bring you down. You can use your fancy scroll bar, or you can, if you've got a mouse that's got one of the rolly scrollers, you can use that. I do want to make a note because this is the thing that happened to me and it was very frustrating. Once you get over the image, if you're scrolling, oh, it's working. Okay, so right now I'm trying to scroll my scrolly guy on my mouse and it's not working. It doesn't work when you're over the image. So if this happens to you, simply move your mouse to the right or left and you can scroll again. So going back up to the image, you'll see a couple of different characters that indicate what we can do with the image. We can zoom in with the plus sign. We can zoom out with the minus sign. If you're really feeling like having a great time, you can rotate it both clockwise and counterclockwise. I don't know why you'd want to do this, but you can. And then this little guy right here enables you to just make the image the whole screen. So you would hit that, it would expand it to the entire screen. And then if you just take your mouse, click and drag, you can move across the image for a closer look. Look at how big it gets. So exciting. So that's the image part. The record, the data part, which is my favorite part, kind of, because that's what I do, is down here. So again, we've seen the identifier reiterated here. We see the description that was written about the image, and then we see this details pane. The details are little bits of detail about the record. So if you want to see that information, if you want to see the identifier, you just click on the little plus sign to make it go away again, minus sign. We've got creator. You can see that this is highlighted in blue. I'm going to go over why that's blue in a moment. Geographic location will outline all of the different locations. So this is in Oakland, Alameda County, California, United States, North Central America, continent. We've got our railroad. We've got subjects that all of us have appended to the different records. This just enables co-location. So if you want to see all of the diesel locomotives, say you're on a record, you're like, I want to see all of them, I want to see them now. You can click on diesel locomotives and see all of the things that are tagged with diesel locomotives in our collections. Physical description is just the size or dimensions, format of original. You can see that it was acetate black and white film. It's a still image, content type, and then our copyright statement. So it gets a little less exciting as you go down, but we're going to go back up. And the example I would like to use again is railroad. So we know that this is an Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway image. And I would like to see all of the ATSF images in our collections. So from here, all you have to do is click on that. It would do the same if you wanted to see like diesel locomotives. It works on all of the subjects, creators, anything that's highlighted in blue will enable you to click on it and get all of those returns. So we see right here that we've got all of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe images in our collections. We have 234 images. On the left, we have additional search filters, or what I sometimes call facets. So if I use one or the other, please note that it's the same. I'm going to try to call them search filters. So we can filter further down from Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe by date, subject, format, decade, location, creation, creator, and I guess if there are additional railroads visible. For this one, let's say I would like to see all of the diesel locomotives that are Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway. All you have to do is click on this right here, and you can click on diesel locomotives. We go from 234 entries to 195. So the majority of them appear to be diesel locomotives. If you decide you want to backtrack, you don't want to see the just diesel locomotives, you want to go back to all Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, you can click the little minus next to the subject. And once it loads, there we go. It'll bring you right back to where you were. In addition, you can filter with multiple entities. So let's say I want to see all ATSF diesel locomotives, and I want to see them from, you have to scroll all the way. I want to see all of the ATSF diesel locomotives from the 1970s. You would click on 1970s in addition, and bada bang, bada boom, you've got it. We've got 52 of those. So that one kind of fast, but that is the basic, just how to kind of filter your searches a little more, things like that. And at this point, I think we're ready to move on to questions. Stop sharing.
Good job, Erin.
Thanks, Adrienne. You did a good job too.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both for a great tour of our new platform.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is obviously a great new step forward for the center in terms of making our collections accessible, and we're still in our first stages and getting this out to you guys, and we're really excited to continue in developing it. And we obviously are very thankful for your patience as we continue to improve this new system, which is very, very new. So want to really thank Adrienne and Erin for spearheading this for us. And we're really excited to see it keep coming together. But yeah, we have a lot of questions starting to come through. So I'm going to have these open to everyone, whoever wants to take them. A lot of just curiosities about the functionality and whatnot. And I think I'll start with one that I'm sure everyone is probably very interested in. Can a low resolution copy of an image be downloaded by the public from the site?
We have not set up that capability at this point, and everything that appears is high res, so you could screenshot it, but we'd prefer you not. But you know, most images are available for use. You just need to get in contact with whoever is filling image requests, which I think right now would be Erin.
Yep. And you can do that by either directly emailing the info@railphoto-art.org email, or going, as Adrienne pointed out earlier, down to the bottom of our new database page and clicking on the contact us, and you can submit an image request that way. I try to respond to them pretty quickly, mostly because I hate having emails hanging out and I like to keep everybody happy. It's a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll make sure to share all that information and those links in a follow-up email after this event as well. Well, just to stick with our digitized images, this is kind of going beyond Odyssey, but into more of our collection side of things. What resolution are our images digitized at, and I guess how are they appearing on the website?
Sure. So we digitize images basically to have a pixel array of 4,000 on the longest side. And I believe everything up on the site right now is pretty much full res. So History IT was really unique in that they offer like a ton of storage space. A lot of other products tried to get us to size down. And while we may want to consider that at some point just to capitalize on the amount of space we have, because we have so many images, we also thought it was important for folks to be able to see things at a higher resolution than they normally would be able to. But yeah, you can really scroll in and see the details, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'd jump in to add to that too. I mean, 4,000 is kind of our minimum. Some images are captured at an even higher resolution than that on the back end, based on the image capture software. We're digitizing those as TIFFs or NUF files, and then presenting them as JPEGs on the site, just to get a couple more of the details that were in that question. And I wanted to jump in quickly because Dave Neal had also asked our plan long-term for the main website versus the Odyssey site. And these will be two separate sites. I mean, the main website is going to cover everything we do, our publications, news about our exhibitions and conferences. All that sort of thing is going to live on our main site. And then Odyssey is going to be specifically to serve images from our collections. And as Adrienne mentioned earlier, we are planning some further revisions to the main site. And as we do that, we plan to integrate the two a little bit more closely, but that's all a little bit down the road yet. So just stay tuned on that.
Yeah, and as Scott mentioned, and just to reiterate, they will be linked together right off of each other. So you should be able to transition from one to the other very easily. So for all intents and purposes, they won't look that different of sites as you're navigating between the two of them. So let's get into some of the, I guess, nitty-gritty in terms of searching. I'm going to combine kind of two questions that came in here. One person's curious if we use abbreviations and metadata, and I'll link that into another question of someone who is curious of what happens if you search railroad when we have it listed on the background as railway, and vice versa. You know, how will that work if someone's trying to search?
I can take this one. Typically, we try to avoid abbreviations, but an exception to the rule is we do include reporting marks in our railroad names. So, etc., like ETC abbreviation versus like ATSF. Reporting marks, sorry. It's past my bedtime. Those are two different things. So you can search reporting marks. You would, as Adrienne showed in the example, you would do the, oh my goodness, the require all terms should get you to it, but you wouldn't want to necessarily do an exact matches only. I don't know if that would necessarily get you to it. The second half of the question, railroad versus railway. So the back end of our database, we mentioned that we have those subject terms. They are built in as what Odyssey calls lists. And the lists enable the capability of adding even like back end terms to the list. So for anything that had railway, we tried really hard to remember to also include railroad in the back end. So if you were to search railroad, but it's actually railway, you would get the return you're looking for, and vice versa, railway, railroad, and railroad, railway. It is entirely possible we miss them because, believe it or not, I am a human and sometimes I make mistakes. If this happens to you, kindly let us know in that awesome contact form. And I can certainly, it's really easy to clean that up and edit it. But we did take a lot of extra care to really try to make this as searchable as possible. I hope that answers the questions.
Yeah. Let's see. Got a lot of questions coming in here. A couple questions dealing with just how we are listing our metadata and explaining a little bit more of what that information is speaking to necessarily, and what do the numbers all mean, why are they listed in what order versus another order. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that. When looking at, say, like, what was someone listed in here? Like Ilman 03093.
Oh, okay. Do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
Sorry if that wasn't very clear.
I mean, if we're just talking about IDs and file names, it's generally the photographer's last name, and the numbers actually refer to its physical location within a box or within a binder, and then it's usually followed by page number and then actual position within the page. Most of our file names and image IDs are built that way, and that's just an easy, quick reference for us. It's also an easy way for us to make sure that each number is unique. We certainly want two files or two images sharing the same ID. Did I cover that correct, guys?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah. Sometimes, I will say, sometimes the length of the identifier varies because if we have a larger format negative, those have individual sleeves, where if we have 35 millimeter negatives, you can fit like 36 of those in a sheet protector. So for the ones that have more per sheet, that would have the additional little number at the end, which is why you might see variances in length.
Okay. So to look a little bit closer at Odyssey, someone's curious about how maybe this compares to some other museum software such as Past Perfect, which I think is a pretty well-known issue on the market.
I've worked a little bit with Past Perfect, and maybe Erin's worked with it too. I think the main difference to me is with Past Perfect, you have to enter every image is a separate upload, every object is a separate upload. You cannot upload multiple objects or images at once, which I think is really appropriate for a museum setting where you just have individual artifacts and objects, and maybe not as helpful for an archival setting. That's kind of the biggest difference to me from my experience. I've worked with instances of Past Perfect also where they don't actually have the public facing end. They just kind of use it internally as administrative. And I feel like Odyssey does a great job of kind of letting you go back and forth in between. Is that true to your experience, Erin? Have you worked with Past Perfect?
I worked with Past Perfect for a few months back in like 2016. That sounds correct. I'm not entirely sure, I could be wrong, and this could have changed since I worked with it, but I feel like Odyssey was really great because it allowed us a lot of flexibility in terms of the different elements that, like the search facets and lists that we were able to include.
Yeah.
We were really able to make it our own and kind of mold it to really benefit our constituents on a more specific level. I don't know if Past Perfect can do that. It might be able to.
I think it's got a pretty set metadata
Yeah.
standard. I don't think
Yeah.
it's customizable.
Yeah. Like we get to have a special element or field for railroad, which I think a few of you might appreciate. I don't know, just a guess.
Yeah.
So that is something I absolutely love about Odyssey.
And I'd like to comment on that too, because one of this is sort of stemming from a lesson we learned in a previous search for our constituent relationship database, where we looked at several products that were very expensive and could do everything that we needed, but they could also do a ton of things that we didn't need, and we didn't really want to pay for that. And we ended up finding a product there called Little Green Light that we absolutely love, that does everything we need, nothing that we don't. It's very reasonably priced and was developed by nonprofits and for nonprofits. And we tried to apply some of the lessons we learned to that for this search. And that was, one of the reasons it pushed us in the direction of Odyssey and History IT. And so far that seems to be working out well.
So when putting stuff into Odyssey, on average, how much time does it take for you to enter just one record? And is that all done by our lovely archival staff?
Oh my gosh, it depends. Sorry. That's an archives joke. It's not. But it does actually depend on how much you're loading at once. Like I personally prefer to load a batch of images. Like I know Abigail, one of our archivists, I think she did a batch of like 1,000 at one time. And it takes a while to upload, but depending on how much data you prepare before you load it, because we are able to load the data into a template and then it just kind of feeds into Odyssey. It catches any potential errors or questions, and then we clean it up from there. So that can take a few hours. If I'm just loading one image because I really like it and I really need it in like right now, and I've done that, it takes like a couple minutes, like probably 5 minutes or less. And it depends on if my computer's behaving that day too. If it's behaving 5 minutes or less, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
As a follow-on to that question, I think there was also some curiosity about workflow and whether we just have staff doing this right now or whether this is something that interns or volunteers might be able to help with in the future.
Well, right now it's staff. I think there is a bit of a learning curve to it. And we started out with kind of a small team that was first focused on migrating everything over from Flickr and then populating new material. I think as we get more staff comfortable with it, you know, there could be ways that volunteers or interns could be involved, you know, supervised by staff.
What have been some of the biggest challenges of moving everything over to a new system?
Erin?
Oh man. So I mentioned that a really nice benefit is that Odyssey is pretty flexible. We've been able to do a lot of really specific work specific to our collections. That also means that we have had to make a lot of decisions. As I think Adrienne mentioned, we had what was called the cataloging working group. So we really got together, and a bunch of us had varying levels of experience and knowledge when it came to this kind of work. So we were able to put our heads together and make those decisions. But it could get tense. If you like metadata, you know, you get a little passionate about some of these choices and how things are cataloged and how they're formatted, things like that. So that was the toughest part for me.
And I think figuring out the railroad controlled vocabulary, because railroads don't all, the names are not always standardized across different authorities. And we looked at a lot of different ones, and you know, we had to code to Scott sometimes because there were just so many variants.
Mhm.
Railroad names are just wild.
Yeah,
There are
and on that, so we use a controlled vocabulary for Odyssey. Are those lists, or is that available for the public to be able to know what those search terms may be that the center is using on the back end?
I think we could probably generate an output of that.
yeah.
The railroad list is super local. You know, I think we started looking at the AAR's list on railserve.com as well as the Trains magazine list, and then combined them and then tried to figure out where they differed and then made some decisions. And I'm sure some of those are probably like debatable, but yeah, I'm sure we'd be happy to send the lists out. You should, but yeah, you should be able to search an advanced search by, you know, kind of require all terms as long as you know most of the railroad name. You don't need to know our exact instance of it, but if you'd like to, we can do that for you too.
Yeah. We have a few people asking about our descriptive metadata standard and if that's available for personal collections. I'm not sure that we would have any descriptive restrictions over that.
I don't think so. We'd be happy to send out examples.
Give me some time to finish cleaning it up. It's very close to being done, but it's not.
Yeah,
It's not 100% yet.
I can say that it's called CRPA Core, which feels cool to call it. And it's mostly based on double core descriptive standards with some, I mean, a couple of, custom fields, I guess we would call them. I know it's about 30 elements.
26 to 30, I believe.
Depending on, yeah, like what type of material you're using.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember because the template that we actually import in has additional fields where we enter additional information so the computer knows what to do or the database knows what to do. So.
Yeah, we've had a couple questions on this. Scott, I can see you typing an answer to one of them, but I think people are curious. How far along are we in uploading our collection? This is a big question, I know. I guess maybe a better way to phrase it is what percentage is uploaded on Odyssey now, and what are kind of the plans forward of slowly getting collections of, available through Odyssey?
Sure. I mean, so I can at least speak to the John Gruber collection because I think we have around 1,400 uploaded, and I know that Abigail digitized over her career 40,000. I don't know if every single one is gonna be worthy of a full res catalog record, and I mean that with respect to John. I just know that he tended to bracket, and that there may be a lot of redundancy. So in many ways, we have a huge backlog of stuff that we've been doing over the pandemic. We stopped posting on Flickr because we knew we were just going to have to migrate everything to the new system. So I don't know, maybe 5 to 10%, but there's a lot more to be done. And I know right now, oh, sorry. I know right now our focus is on Shaughnessy, Gruber, and Illman. And I think we're going to have those archivists working on those collections focus on that a little bit into the fall. And then we're going to tag team out and have more, I think, Posner and Steinheimer, and probably just go back and forth for a while. But we're still kind of getting a grip on, I think, the workflow and how long things will truly take.
Yeah.
And we may need interns and volunteers at some point to help out, because we've done a ton of processing, and we're just starting to show everyone the fruits of our labors. So
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think we've digitized more than 200,000 images in our collection so far. But we have about 10,500 on Odyssey, which is a fantastic start, but obviously a long way to go there, and also a lot still more to digitize. So plenty of job security for our archives team.
Yeah. Obviously it's very early days. And as we've been putting out in our e-blast, if people have been following along, we obviously have a very extensive art collection as well as a few moving film. This is going to be, very far down the road, but could we expect to hopefully see some entries on Odyssey of our fine art collection?
I would think so, as long as we were certain of the copyrights and reproduction rights. I mean, I think a lot of that could fall under fair use. But yeah, we definitely intend to be using it for more than photographs. We also have some pretty interesting moving image films, and I think it can probably take those file sizes too. So I would love to get some clips of that stuff up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just running a little bit behind on there. So Scott, jump in and ask any other questions if you have any. Just finding that.
Oh, sure. A couple of back-end questions. One person asks, makes the correct assumption that History IT hosts the site and the uploads, and just asks whether we view that as a risk or a great feature. And I would say the answer is both, frankly. I mean, we're not an IT company ourselves. That's not what we're trying to do or to be. So having someone else do this for us is great, but we acknowledge the fact that there is a risk involved there. However, we really feel that ultimate risk is really just in terms of the work we put into populating Odyssey itself. I mean, we still, and as far as we know, for all time, we'll store locally 3 copies of every file we digitize, as well as the original analog file, which we still consider the archival master. So there's going to be, including that archival master, at least 4 copies, 1 master and 3 digital surrogates, stored locally for all time. And we swap out our hard drives on a rotating 3-year basis. So we have 3 hard drives for every collection, and we're rotating, we're essentially replacing 1 set of those drives every year. So, make sure that the hardware is fresh and up to date. We use drives from different manufacturers, and also a mix of solid state as well as mechanical drives or magnetic drives. So there's we tried to build in a lot of redundancy to our local storage. Odyssey gives us another place where photographs can live, but we don't really look at it as our as a digital archive. It's really a way to present the collection rather than to store it securely. So for us, the hosting work that History IT does is great. It's kind of in addition and above what we're trying to do locally.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, it's really kind of storing our access files rather than our archival files. And yeah, it's a great tool for presentation. It's also, there's a great back end with additional like staff only element sets that
Right.
allow us to really manage the collection as well. So it's really a management and presentation tool more than a preservation one as far as digital files are concerned.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, someone asked when a photograph is submitted, I'm guessing to Odyssey, what happens to the physical copy? And that obviously remains in our archive.
Yep, we preserve them. We don't throw them out. We know that digital media is inherently fragile, so.
Mhm. Yeah, and it looks like there's a few questions that are, I hear someone asked, do you have the capability to convert included or preloaded metadata into your records? I'm not an archivist, certainly not a digital archivist. I'm not sure if that's assuming digital born material, which I'll let you speak on whether the center has any of that in their collection or not.
So right now we're not really collecting born digital, only because we would like to have more hardy digital preservation protocols. So yeah, everything you're seeing on the site currently is a digital surrogate, meaning that it's a digitized copy of a physical image.
Yeah.
We've had a couple people ask about the possibility of using Odyssey personally. Unfortunately, that's not something we're able to do. History IT is a company trying to make money, and so we can use this for our own records, but as far as making it available for personal use, that's not something I think we or they are going to be able to do. I'm certain they'd be happy to talk with anyone interested in purchasing the product, but it's not something we're able to open up to our members to be able to use, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we have well, to depart from that a bit, but thanks for taking that one, Scott. So someone pointed out that one of the photographs that probably popped up during your demo, Adrienne, is that it'll enter the public domain in 2029. And just curious about what the center's policies are once something, I guess, hits that mark.
Well, if it enters the public domain, I mean, we can't really claim copyright over it. In which case it would be part of our collections, but you wouldn't really need to ask our permission to use it. So.
Let's see. So was the standard set of lexicon used when uploading to the Odyssey, such as the Library of Congress uses, or was it created specifically on behalf of the center?
So the metadata schema itself is ours, the descriptive schema, based on Dublin Core. Some of the controlled vocabularies that we've used in some of the controlled fields, I believe, come from Library of Congress, and also the Getty Institute. And I'm thinking specifically what TGN, that's Library of Congress. And you could probably do this more, Erin.
Yeah. So the pre-existing control vocabularies that we opted to use were the thesaurus for geographic, or not geographic, well, so the thesaurus for geographic names, which we kind of had to finagle. It's a long story. It works. So that one, the thesaurus for graphic materials, Getty's art and architecture thesaurus.
I think we're using TGM 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, that's the thesaurus for your graphic materials 1 and 2. Because everybody formats a little differently. So those are ones we use, but we also have a couple of homegrown ones that we utilized. So the railroad vocabulary, as we've discussed a few times, we put that together ourselves. That was a labor of love. We created some just like personal lists for the creators, the photographers, because not everybody is in like Library of Congress or what is called VF. So, but we did try to pull from pre-existing lists if we could, just because it makes it more I don't know, it feels more globally comfortable.
Mhm.
So both, the short answer.
Haley, I've got a couple questions here. I'll try to answer quickly while you want to pull up a couple to get ready for Adrienne and Erin. Tom Taylor asked if there isn't a bit of research required before an image is placed in the system, and that's often the case, although in some cases, in a lot of cases actually, the photographers provide really accurate and detailed and descriptive metadata that we're basically able to use. We do try to fact check things to the best of our abilities, and for images that don't have complete metadata, then yes, a lot of research is required in some cases. Or in some cases, we post information or post images without complete metadata in the hopes of being able to get more of that later. So it's kind of a both and situation there. But yeah, we do certainly do a good bit of research on the back end for a lot of the images that we post. And then John Stevens asks if Odyssey allows you to stack images like Lightroom to be used for bracketing. And I think I understand that question. And Odyssey does have a feature where you can have multiple images attached to a single record. Right now, we only have one image per record. But we do have the option to attach multiple images per record. So if we wanted to have both a negative image and a positive image of a black and white photograph, for example, that's something we could do. If we have a single negative image that a photographer has printed multiple different ways. And I know some examples of that in the collection where in one case, the print's made very dark, and in another case, the print's made very light, and the photographer kept both of them for different reasons. We could attach both of those to the same record and have them in there. And I know, Erin, you were having fun spitting the images around, but I know one thing we could do there is scan the back of a print and also attach that to the image. And then if writing on the back of the print is done in different directions, you could actually rotate that part to be able to read what's on the back of the print in the correct format. So we do have those capabilities built in. It's not something we're taking advantage of yet, as we just have such a tremendous backlog of those first images to get up on Odyssey, but it is something we could do in the future and hope to be able to make use of.
Yeah, so a few more questions about Odyssey as well. It has a number of collaborative components, and I know we've played around with some of those, and obviously you have the feature galleries. But do we have, I know they have a lot of accessibility. Do we have any other plans or any other thoughts that you guys are excited to explore in the future?
I'd love to do more albums in the Explore tab. I think right now we're limited to 7, I believe, that we can do at a time, and I'd love to see that number increase. You know, and these don't always have to be staff curated albums. We could certainly do guest curation as well, which I think would be a really fun collaborative thing that we could do with the community. But that was kind of the most exciting part to me, is just being able to just basically use tags to group all the images in new ways we never really have been able to before, because we've never really had the collections all cataloged in one place, and to present that to the public. I don't know. I enjoy the Children and Animals album a lot.
That's also one of my favorites. Yep. I believe the infamous llamas photo is in that album.
I also know there's a few other features we can do too. I know there's a timeline feature which we might be able to make use of. And I also know there's a like now and then feature, so we could conceivably take 2 images of the same location and compare them from different time periods. And I think that would be a fun thing to do at some point too.
Yeah. We figured out how to make them work. It's just a matter of finding the time to make them ready for public consumption with the backlog that we're trying to get up.
Yep.
So someday things are going to be extra cool instead of just super cool.
Great. Well, I think we'll look to start wrapping up here, just to close out.
Haley, I've got a couple more I'd like to respond to, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So Jan Young asked if we find a poor image, possibly under unexposed film or extreme blur, or something underexposed, do we still keep it or just throw it out? Our answer is, once we take images into our collection, they're part of the permanent collection, and they'd have to go through our deaccessioning process at that point. So it is something we occasionally do, but it's something we take pretty seriously. And generally, we don't get rid of images. Now, of course, if it's poor quality, we're probably not going to share it, but it would still be a part of the permanent collection unless it was deaccessioned through our formal process for that. Bill Diven asks if we're digitizing photographers' documentation notes and the like to be accessible at some point. We do get a lot of ancillary information that comes in. Right now, we're really focusing on digitizing the images themselves, again, just because we have such a tremendous number that we're working through. Certainly in some cases, particularly interesting manuscripts or notes, we may try to digitize at some point. I know there's a lot of interest in that in the Steinheimer collection based on the quality and sort of the character that went into a lot of his note files. So that's something we might be able to do in the future. All of those images or all of those materials are going to be retained as part of our permanent collection. Again, we're really focusing on getting photographs up in the system right now, but we would like to be able to do some of that in the future. And I did see, I know we did try to get things into the Q&A, but I did see one thing in the chat that I wanted to respond to because it's also a question that comes up a lot. And that's about our fact that we're using sort of standard naming conventions for place names, publicly accepted political places, and rather than railroad locations. Railroad locations we include as much as possible in the description field of the image. One of the reasons for that is that location field, we really want to use readily accessible names. Obviously, the rail enthusiast community is our biggest single user, but we are trying to build an archive that's going to be accessible to as much of the public as possible. And so we do want to have readily recognizable standard place names as those controlled vocabulary. Of course, railroad location names can change over time sometimes too. Regular place names can as well. But right now we're trying to put those railroad place names into the description field of the images, and we use those to the greatest extent possible, generally relying on the photographer to supply those. But when we find those through our own research, we'll add them there as well. And yeah, there are still more questions, but I think we've answered a bunch, and we really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm out there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to close out for people who are, starting to explore this and they're looking for additional help in their search. How can they get in contact with someone at the center to, help them find what they're looking for?
So you're welcome to directly email me. Also Erin when she's available. But yeah, I would, if you just want to reach out to me, I'm Adrienne at railphoto-art.org. And if I can't help you, no one can. No, I will be happy to help you. Also, if I can't figure it out, I will ask Erin.
Between the two of us, we've been able to solve, I think, everything so far. And if I can't solve it, then I contact my chief technical officer, I believe is his title, over at Odyssey.
We're in pretty close contact with the developers. And one thing that's great, as I mentioned, is they're a pretty small company, so we can have a lot of influence in how the product is developed, which is really cool. So yeah, if there's anything we can't answer, we can also reach out to the vendors themselves.
You can also use that awesome contact us button at the bottom of the Odyssey page if you don't happen to remember Adrienne's email. It'll get to us.
Well, thank you so much, Adrienne and Erin, for taking the time to do tonight's presentation, but for all the work that has gone into getting this new site launched. We're so excited to have more of our collections available for our public and our members to explore. You're going to have a lot of fun just searching around, playing with all those new phrase searches and whatnot, as you can find so much on there. And thank you especially for Erin, who's really been the driving force behind getting this up and available for everyone. So I just wanted to remind everyone again that tonight's presentation is being recorded. It will be uploaded on our YouTube page, youtube.com/railphotoart, in about 2 weeks' time, where you can find most of our other presentations. Our next presentation is going to be next week. On Tuesday, August 22nd, we're going to be interviewing the winners of our 2023 John E. Gruber Creative Photography Awards program. Registration for that is open on our website now. I'll also send registration information out in a follow-up email probably tomorrow. So thank you everyone for hanging around and sending in all your questions. We try to get through as many as we could, and if you have any more, just follow up with Adrienne and Erin how they described before, and hopefully we'll see you all next week.